Under the jungles of Mexico sleeps a city without a name. It cannot be seen on any map, and no legend remembers it. Yet when a beam of LiDAR pierced the ground, the earth responded. The south of Mexico has always been considered the land of eternal rains and dense mists. There, where the green hills of Tabasco melt into swampy plains, the earth feels alive. It breathes, rustles, and hides something far greater than the roots of ancient trees. At first glance, these are just ordinary farmlands. Nothing unusual, but it was here that a discovery began that would change our understanding of the ancient Maya civilization. For years, archaeologists walked past this place without suspecting that beneath their feet lay a colossal structure created by human hands. There were no walls, no stone statues, no visible ruins, only compacted clay and lines resembling the traces of old roads. Everything changed when specialists arrived in the region with a new instrument, LiDAR. This technology allowed them to see through the canopy, as if through a transparent veil, and reveal what nature had hidden for centuries. When the first data appeared on the monitor, the researchers froze in silence. A perfectly shaped contour of a massive platform emerged, so enormous that it was impossible to recognize it from the ground. It was not just a mound, but an artificial terrace nearly a kilometer long and as tall as a multi-story building. The realization did not come immediately. At first, they assumed it was an old riverbed or the result of erosion, but measurements revealed perfect symmetry. The platform had right angles, sharp boundaries, and was aligned with the cardinal directions. Then the archaeologists understood. They had uncovered not a natural formation, but something engineered. The discovery was named Aguada Phoenix, Phoenix Reservoir, after a nearby settlement. The irony was striking. This place truly rose from the ashes of oblivion, like a bird hidden beneath centuries of soil. From the air, the view was astonishing. In the fields where farmers planted corn, a colossal platform stretched out, surrounded by roads, canals, and small mounds. Together, they formed a geometric network as if drawn by an engineer's hand. The researchers immediately understood that they were standing at the threshold of a major discovery. In scale, the structure surpassed all known buildings of the pre-classic period. It was older than the great Maya temples and older than monumental cities such as Tikal and Calakmul. Until now, official archaeology believed that at the time, the Maya lacked both centralized authority and the technical capacity for such construction. But LiDAR data destroyed those assumptions. Before the researchers stood a monumental structure built around 3,000 years ago, when the region was thought to be inhabited only by small, nomadic groups. And yet someone back then managed to unite thousands of people to erect a structure comparable to the pyramids of Egypt. The first excavations revealed steps, terraces, and remnants of ancient ritual platforms hidden under layers of earth. The soil deep inside bore traces of burning, evidence of large ceremonies with fire and offerings. But the strangest part was this: no sarcophagi, no temples, no royal artifacts were found inside. The entire space was empty, as if meant not for people but for the sky itself. Standing on the summit of this platform, archaeologists felt the silence thicken around them. It seemed the earth carried the memory of those who once gathered here under the blazing sun for something monumental. Perhaps it was a ritual of speaking to the stars, or a meeting point between the earthly and the celestial. One thing was clear: Aguada Phoenix was no accident. It was the trace of a civilization that understood the cosmos better than many people today. The discovery beneath the fields of Tabasco became not just an archaeological sensation. It forced scholars to rethink the entire timeline of Maya cultural origins. Beneath the soft clay and the roots of tropical trees lay a history that did not begin with stone cities and warriors, but with a vast open platform turned toward the heavens. Where cicadas buzz and cattle graze today, perhaps the first hymns to the gods of light once echoed. And if not for the rays of LiDAR, all of this would have remained nothing more than the Earth's silent breath beneath our feet. When researchers first climbed to the top of the massive platform of Aguada Phoenix, they realized they were not standing on an ordinary hill. This was a meticulously engineered architectural complex where every meter had meaning. Its scale was staggering. The platform stretched nearly a mile, more than 300 meters wide, and up to 15 meters tall. And it was built not from stone, like the pyramids of Egypt or Teotihuacan, but from compacted earth and clay. Millions of cubic meters of soil lifted by hand and pressed into a monolith that survived 3 millennia. Not one brick, not a single stone block. Only earth transformed into geometric perfection. At first glance, the structure seemed simple, but the closer researchers studied it, the more obvious it became that this simplicity was deceptive. The platform was aligned strictly with the lines of sunrise and sunset. On the days of the equinox, the light fell along its axis, illuminating the entire surface from edge to edge as if awakening an inner mechanism. It was not just a platform. It was a gigantic calendar where every shadow and every ray of light carried meaning. Scientists proposed that the builders used it to observe the movement of celestial bodies, synchronizing the life of their society with the cycles of the cosmos. Roads stretched out along the edges of the platform. They diverged in different directions like the rays of a star, connecting Aguada Phoenix with other settlements. These roads crossed canals and embankments, forming a system reminiscent of a living organism. The network of canals not only diverted water, but likely represented a symbolic boundary between the sacred and the ordinary worlds. Archaeologists found the remains of bridges leading to the main entrances, all oriented strictly eastward, toward the rising sun. Everything indicated that the builders perceived the world not horizontally, but vertically, linking earth, water, and sky into a single integrated structure. The most astonishing aspect was the absence of rulers' traces. There were no palaces, no thrones, no inscriptions glorifying kings. This distinguished Aguada Phoenix from Tikal and Teotihuacan, where power was expressed in stone and blood. Here, power seemed to belong not to a person but to an idea. Perhaps this was what made the construction of such a massive structure possible. People did not build for a single ruler. They created a space for everyone, a place where collective faith replaced authority. When engineers conducted laser scanning, they discovered that the surface of the platform was perfectly leveled. The margin of error in height across its entire length did not exceed a few centimeters. This required knowledge of geometry and astronomy that, according to traditional science, the ancient Maya supposedly did not yet possess. But reality suggested otherwise. Even today, with modern equipment, building such a structure without losing shape would be difficult. Some sections of the complex showed signs of terracing. Along the edges were 9 smaller platforms, possibly intended for rituals. Their arrangement resembled a constellation, and their orientation matched the movement of the sun on certain days of the year. Researchers began noticing patterns. Wherever excavations were carried out, they uncovered hidden mathematical principles. Comparing Aguada Phoenix with Teotihuacan, archaeologists saw shared traits: an obsession with symmetry, alignment with celestial events, and sacred use of space. Yet centuries separated them. Teotihuacan emerged later, as if inheriting the idea from its predecessors. This led to the hypothesis that Aguada Phoenix may have been the very origin point from which the architectural tradition of Mesoamerica was born. Particular attention was drawn to the quality of the earthen material. Analyses showed that the builders used a special mixture of clay and organic matter that over time became harder than stone. They knew how to compact the layers so water would not damage the structure. This meant the builders were not just laborers. They were engineers who understood the properties of materials and the durability of construction. When archaeologists climbed to the top of the platform and looked into the distance, they did not see ruins but a ghost city. Straight lines of roads stretched toward the horizon. Canals reflected the sky, and the wind sweeping across the surface seemed to echo ancient chants long forgotten. Everything signaled that a culture once existed here that thought not in houses and walls, but in the very form of space. They created not buildings, but ideas, imprinted into the earth. Aguada Phoenix became proof that civilizations can be born not from wars and conquests, but from cooperation and a shared purpose. It was a monument to collective will, an architecture ahead of its time, standing before people of the 21st century as a reminder that greatness does not always require stone. Sometimes earth, faith, and the understanding that each person is part of something greater are enough. When archaeologists began clearing the center of the Aguada Phoenix platform, they expected to find familiar traces of rituals, fire pits, fragments of vessels, remains of food. But what they uncovered beneath the top layer of earth turned out to be entirely different. At the very heart of the platform lay a cruciform pit lined with clay of 4 different colors: red, white, black, and yellow. These colors were not accidental. For the Maya, they symbolized the 4 cardinal directions and the elements, forming a sacred diagram of the universe. The center of the cross was filled with a mixture of jade fragments and hematite powder. Inside it, archaeologists found several polished jade axes, objects the Maya believed to be vessels of the Earth's soul. Each axe was carefully positioned with its blade pointing upward, as if directed toward the sun. This was not a sacrifice in the usual sense, but an act of attunement with the cosmos. The Maya believed that the world was held together by the balance of the 4 cardinal directions, and that humans had to participate in maintaining this balance. The cross found beneath the platform turned out to be an ancient model of the universe. Its lines represented not just directions, but the pathways along which gods and celestial bodies traveled. The center was considered the navel of the world, the point where heaven, earth, and the underworld intersected. According to Maya beliefs, this was the place through which the ray of light passed, connecting humans with the gods. The cross had no relation to later religions. It was a symbol of birth and rebirth, a schematic model of the cosmos inscribed into the body of the earth. When archaeologists analyzed the pigments, they discovered that the red color was made from ochre, the white from limestone, the black from soot, and the yellow from rare clay minerals. All of these materials had been gathered from different parts of the region. People brought earth from afar to create a miniature representation of the world. In this way, the ritual at Aguada Phoenix unified the landscape into a symbolic map. It was not just an image, it was a living act of creation, where humans reproduced the cosmos with their own hands. Researchers studying the pit's placement noted its precise alignment with the sunrise on the day of the equinox. At that moment, a beam of light passed through the center of the cross and touched the jade fragments, creating a brief but blinding flash. This may have been an ancient ritual marking the beginning of a new cycle. The Maya did not live by the solar year, but by a sacred 260-day calendar. This cycle was based on the movement of the sun and planets, as well as human biorhythms. Each day had its own name, sign, and energy. And perhaps it was here, on the Aguada Phoenix platform, that this calendar was embodied in architecture. 260 days is not just a number. It is the average length of human pregnancy. For the Maya, time was born together with life. Each day was considered a step, bringing the world closer to a new breath. Therefore, the platform aligned with celestial lines was not simply a temple. It was a calendar of clay and light that showed when to sow, when to offer sacrifices, and when to reconnect with the forces of the sky. Some researchers believe that during rituals a fire was lit at the center of the cross, reflecting the solar disk. When the sun stood directly above the horizon, the flame and the ray of light merged, creating the effect of a blinding radiance. This was a moment of unity, when the celestial and the earthly blended into one. For the ancient Maya, architecture was the language of the gods. Every form, every proportion carried meaning. At Aguada Phoenix, they did not build walls, they built the universe. People gathered here not for a ruler and not for power. They gathered to renew the world, to return it to balance. The platform served not as a dwelling, but as an axis of time, a place where space itself became a prayer. Today, archaeologists see in this the trace of an ancient worldview in which science and faith were one. The Maya did not separate observation from worship. Looking at the stars meant speaking to them. Their cross, their colors, their jade axes were not decorations, but formulas. Formulas of the cosmos, written into the earth. In the history of ancient civilizations, power almost always stands beside stone. Egyptian pyramids were raised for pharaohs, Sumerian ziggurats for gods known only to priests, and Maya cities like Tikal and Calakmul became arenas of endless wars between kings. But Aguada Phoenix broke this rule. No thrones were found here, no royal statues, no inscriptions praising rulers. There were no dynastic symbols, no signs of slavery. Archaeologists encountered a phenomenon, a civilization without kings. Excavations showed that thousands of tons of earth had been moved by the hands of ordinary people, not under the threat of a whip. There were no traces of coercion, no fortress walls, no barracks, no signs of slave camps. Everything pointed to voluntary labor coordinated with astonishing precision. This was not a pyramid built for one person. It was a project built for all. Archaeologists call it the first example of a massive public undertaking in which authority was replaced by belief in a shared purpose. People gathered not for a lord, but for the cosmos. The entire structure of the complex speaks of equality. The houses found around it are roughly the same size. There are no mansions of nobles or separate quarters for an elite. People lived side by side, took part in the same rituals, ate the same food. The ceramic vessels and tools uncovered across the area are distributed evenly, with no traces of luxury. This points to a society where value was measured not by wealth, but by participation in a shared purpose. Historians long refused to believe such an organization was possible. In their view, great constructions required centralized power, orders, and hierarchy. But Aguada Phoenix shows something different. Here, architecture grew out of cooperation. People united around a cosmic idea where each person felt like a part of a greater design. Perhaps they were driven not by religion alone, but by a sense of connection with nature, with the sun, and with time itself. The platform was not a palace, but a stage for ritual. There was no throne on it, but there was space for gatherings. Thousands of people could stand shoulder to shoulder, watch the sunrise, and feel that they were participating in an event that connected them with the world. It was a celebration of equality, a moment when the boundaries between gods and humans dissolved. Researchers found traces of enormous bonfires, the bones of sacrificed animals, and vessels that once held cacao. It appears that ceremonies were held here where people shared food and drink, strengthening communal bonds. At the heart of every ritual stood not the name of a ruler, but the sun itself. In those moments, Aguada Phoenix became a living organism, where every human life formed part of the great breathing of the earth. Modern anthropologists believe that societies like this could survive for centuries without war. The absence of centralized authority made them flexible. They did not collapse with the death of a leader, nor did they split into castes. Their strength lay in horizontal connections, in the unity of people who could come to agreement without orders. In this sense, Aguada Phoenix can be seen as an ancient model of utopia, where knowledge and faith replaced force and fear. But behind this balance lay depth. To create a structure of such scale required organization, discipline, and precision. Who coordinated thousands of people? Who chose the day to begin the work? There were probably advisors, keepers of the calendar, elders. Yet their authority was not personal, but spiritual. They did not command, they guided. Perhaps that is why Aguada Phoenix endured for millennia. It was built by people who did not need domination to be great. They lived in a world where strength lay not in subjugation, but in agreement. Their society disappeared, but it left behind a message, a reminder that greatness does not require kings. When a person stands today on top of this platform and looks toward the horizon, they see not a monument to power, but a trace of equality. Here, every stone and every handful of earth is imbued with the idea of unity. And perhaps that is why Aguada Phoenix outlasted all its neighbors, becoming a symbol of a civilization built not on fear, but on shared belief. When archaeologists first saw the LiDAR-generated map of Aguada Phoenix, their attention was immediately captured by its precise symmetry. The platform, roads, and side mounds all followed a single line. When this line was placed onto a modern map and compared with the movement of the sun, the truth became clear. The axis of the structure aligns with the point of sunrise on the day of the equinox. This was no coincidence. It was a statement of knowledge far ahead of its time. For the ancient Maya, observing the sky was not entertainment, it was a means of survival. They saw in celestial cycles the breathing of the gods, and through their movements they measured the rhythm of the earth. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, a new day began not only for humans, but for the world itself. The architecture of Aguada Phoenix recorded that moment, turning it into a ritual. When the light traveled across the platform's axis, it passed through its entire length like a golden arrow connecting heaven and earth. The builder's astronomical knowledge is astonishing. The platform is aligned not simply to the east, but to specific angles of sunrise on dates corresponding to key points of the sacred calendar. This calendar consisted of two cycles, a solar cycle of 365 days and a ritual cycle of 260. Their alignment occurred once every 52 years, a moment the Maya believed marked the renewal of the world. Perhaps it was then that grand ceremonies were held on the platform, when heaven and earth came back into harmony. Long before the Maya developed writing, they already possessed a highly advanced system of astronomical observation. They tracked not only the sun, but also the moon, Venus, and the brightest stars. Venus was considered a herald of change. In some temples of Central America, its movements were marked with stone indicators. Archaeologists believe that similar markers, lines or pits aligned with planetary trajectories, may have existed at Aguada Phoenix as well. This made the complex not just a temple, but an ancient observatory. The high priests, later known as keepers of the calendar, already knew how to predict equinoxes and eclipses. They knew when the rains would come and when it was time to sow. Their authority was based not on force, but on knowledge. These were people who could look into the sky and see not chaos, but a system. They understood that celestial motion was a language through which the universe spoke. Around the platform, archaeologists found small mounds arranged in a line. When researchers compared their orientation with solar positions, they discovered that the mounds aligned not only with the equinoxes, but also with key dates of the agricultural cycle. On the days when the sun rose directly above these markers, the planting of maize, the sacred crop of the Maya, would begin. Thus, Aguada Phoenix was not merely a religious center, but an instrument for measuring time itself. Particular attention was drawn to the geometry of the platform. Its length and width follow proportions close to numbers found in the Maya calendar. This suggests that the builders did not simply observe the sky. They inscribed its laws into the very structure of the earth. Every meter of the platform corresponded to a specific day, every line to the path of a celestial body. Some researchers believe that the priests used light reflected from water reservoirs to observe the stars. At night, when the wind died down, the surface of the water became a mirror. The sky reflected in it, allowing observers to precisely track the movement of the heavenly bodies. This data was then transferred onto the ground, becoming architectural lines that served as a calendar made of clay. And all of this took place thousands of years before the rise of the Maya's classical cities, long before written records, tables, and temples covered in inscriptions. The people of Aguada Phoenix did not yet know written symbols, but they already mastered the language of the cosmos. Their knowledge was passed down orally, through rituals, songs, movement, and light. Today, when modern astronomers overlay computer models of the sun's movement onto the site's layout, the matches are perfect. At sunrise on the equinox, the beam of light falls directly into the center of the platform, as if the builders calculated the trajectory using instruments that, according to official science, they could not have possessed. This is no coincidence. It is the trace of an ancient mind that understood humanity's place within celestial geometry. Aguada Phoenix remains one of the rare proofs that knowledge and faith were once united. A people without rulers and without advanced technology created a tool that connected the earth and the stars. They did not simply look at the sky, they built its reflection on the ground. When archaeologists began to study the terrain around Aguada Phoenix in detail, they discovered that the platform was only the heart of a much larger system. Satellite images and LiDAR maps revealed long lines winding down the slopes of hills. These were not roads or trails. They were canals. Some led to an enormous dam nearly a kilometer long. Others linked lowlands and reservoirs. All of this had been built by people who, according to traditional assumptions, did not know metal or the wheel. But these structures did not serve ordinary purposes. Water was not simply stored, it was guided. The canals formed a network that breathed with the earth. During the rainy season they filled, reflecting the sky and turning into mirrors. During the dry months they emptied, revealing patterns formed in clay. It was a living body in which water played the role of blood. People did not build dams merely to survive. They created a mechanism of connection between heaven and earth. The main dam is breathtaking in scale. Its height reaches 15 meters, and its length exceeds 800. It is composed not of stone but of layers of clay and sand arranged in strict sequence. Each layer has its own color, from light to dark, like a painting made from earth. Researchers noticed that the order of these layers corresponds to Maya symbolism: yellow for the east and the sun, black for the west and night, red for the south and fire, white for the north and air. The dam did not just restrain water. It reflected the structure of the world. When the water level rose, the mirror-like surface merged with the sky. At that moment, the entire complex became a giant reflector. As the sun rose over the horizon, it appeared doubled, reborn. For the builders, this was a sign of the Earth's breath, a moment when the world renewed itself and the elements spoke in one language. Archaeologists found traces of ritual platforms along the canals. In some places, remnants of bonfires, vessels, and small animal figurines were preserved. It appears that ceremonies were performed here in which water was the main participant. People offered gifts not to the gods, but to the flow itself. They understood that life exists only where water moves. Modern geologists note that the canal system creates a natural circulation of moisture. Even thousands of years after its builders disappeared, it still functions. During the rainy season, water travels along the same routes envisioned by ancient engineers. Such precision would be impossible without deep knowledge of the landscape and climate. The people of Aguada Phoenix did not simply observe nature, they became a part of it. Some researchers believe that the dams and canals served not only ritual purposes, but acoustic ones as well. When water filled the reservoirs, the sounds of footsteps and voices were amplified. The wind and the flowing water blended into a rhythm that echoed the breathing of the earth. Perhaps the rituals were accompanied by songs in which the human voice merged with the sound of water. This created the effect of a single resonance, as if the planet itself were singing with the people. For the Maya, water was not merely an element, but a living being. Its color shifted from green to blue, reflecting the sky, and its surface was considered a boundary between worlds. Through water lay the path to the underworld, the place from which rains come and where souls ascend. The dams and canals became gateways through which a person could speak to the gods. This reveals a unique philosophy of the builders. They did not separate the practical from the sacred. Every tool was a ritual, every engineering idea a prayer. Their science was indistinguishable from their faith. By building dams, they did not tame the water. They inscribed themselves into its breath. Today, as satellites once again trace these lines on maps, it becomes clear that this was not a random network, but a deliberate structure. It united the platform, the ritual centers, and the natural springs into a single whole. This was not merely an engineering marvel. It was an attempt to achieve harmony between the human world and the world of the elements. Aguada Phoenix was neither a temple nor a city. It was the Earth's breath materialized in clay. Every canal, every dam, every mirror-like reservoir was part of a vast symphony in which humans played not the leading role, but a harmonious one. And perhaps that is precisely why this place still lives, because it was built not against nature, but with it. For centuries, Aguada Phoenix lay beneath the soil like a heart that had stopped beating, yet never lost its shape. People left, the forest returned, and only the wind continued to sweep over the top of the platform where thousands once gathered. Why this happened remains one of the most enigmatic chapters in the history of ancient Mesoamerica. Researchers propose several explanations, each plausible. The most obvious is environmental. Archaeologists found evidence of abrupt climate fluctuations that could have destroyed the balance between humans and nature. Pollen analysis showed that about 3,000 years ago the region entered a period of severe drought. Rivers shrank, rainy seasons became unpredictable, and crops failed. For a society where water was not only a resource but a sacred symbol, this meant collapse. If the dams ceased to breathe, the earth itself stopped responding. Another explanation is engineering. In the lower layers of the complex, archaeologists discovered unfinished canals and collapsed dam walls. It seems the system of water corridors fell out of balance. Perhaps the people tried to expand it, altering natural flows, and triggered a catastrophe: soil salinization, flooding, destruction of infrastructure. What was meant to connect began to divide. A mistake in the design could have doomed the entire settlement. The social hypothesis tells another story. Aguada Phoenix was built without kings, without centralized power. This gave it strength and unity, but also made it vulnerable to discord. When the climate changed, swift decisions were needed, but there was no one to make them. People accustomed to equality could not coordinate their actions in a crisis. Their belief in a shared purpose weakened, and the platform, once a symbol of harmony, became an empty arena where there was no one left to sing the songs of the sun. Gradually, the rituals ceased. The canals grew over with grass. The water disappeared. People left the valley, carrying their memory elsewhere, where the first cities of the classic Maya would later arise. But the strange thing is that no trace of Aguada Phoenix survived. Not a single mention appears in the codices, myths, or songs of the later Maya. It is as if the civilization deliberately erased it from memory. Some historians suggest that the departure was accompanied by a ritual of forgetting. In Maya culture, there existed a concept of cleansing the land, when a place that had lost its spiritual balance had to be returned to nature. It was not destroyed, it was left behind, allowed to be erased by time. It is possible that the builders of Aguada Phoenix themselves closed their city, understanding that its cycle had come to an end. Modern scholars see a lesson in this. Any civilization, no matter how harmonious, can disappear if it breaks its balance with nature. Aguada Phoenix shows that it is not war or greed that brings an end, but silence. People stopped listening to the earth, and the earth stopped responding. When, 3,000 years later, LiDAR illuminated the platform once again, the world seemed to hear the echo of a forgotten breath. Beneath the forest lay not an empty field, but the trace of a greatness born without weapons and without kings. The disappearance of Aguada Phoenix was not a defeat, but a pause, a reminder of the fragility of balance. Today, when archaeologists stand on its summit and look toward the horizon, they see the same line the builders once aligned themselves with. The sun still rises in the same points, water still flows through ancient channels, and the earth holds its silence. That silence is not about death, it is a quiet in which memory speaks. 3,000 years have passed, and the forest once again breathes above the earth where a nameless city sleeps. Its builders are long gone, their language dissolved into dust, but the form remains. The platform of Aguada Phoenix lies like the imprint of human thought, suspended between sky and soil. And now, as LiDAR beams once again unveil it from beneath the layers of time, it becomes clear, this is not merely an archaeological site. It is a mirror. It reflects not the past, but ourselves. We are used to thinking that greatness means power, force, monumentality. But Aguada Phoenix breaks that stereotype. There are no thrones here, no statues of kings, no traces of armies. And yet it stands as one of the grandest constructions of the ancient world. It was created by people who had neither rulers, nor slaves, nor weapons, only the desire to be part of something greater. They built not for orders, but for meaning. This makes their legacy far more human than the marble palaces of empires. Aguada Phoenix reminds us that progress does not have to flow through power. It is born where people unite around an idea, where labor becomes a prayer, and knowledge becomes part of ritual. In this clay platform lies a philosophy of balance. Humans are not the masters of nature. They are its continuation. They did not conquer the earth. They listened to its breath. And so their city was not destroyed by war. It simply dissolved, like a wave completing its cycle. Modern technologies, the same ones that scan the ground to reveal traces of ancient worlds, seem to turn their question toward us. We have learned to see through forest and stone, but do we see ourselves? We can calculate the orbit of any star, but do we understand what the ancients knew without formulas? The connection between the rhythm of the heart and the rhythm of the sun, between the breath of a person and the breath of the earth? Aguada Phoenix teaches a simple, forgotten principle: unity in action. When people build not for profit, but for belonging, even clay becomes eternal. Their platform has endured for 3 millennia because it was created not against the world, but in harmony with it. And perhaps this is the greatest secret of civilization's survival, not the power of weapons, but the balance of meaning. Each time we look at LiDAR images and see lines and contours drawn by light, we are looking into the reflection of ancient memory. This is not just archaeology, it is a dialogue between past and future. The people of Aguada Phoenix already knew what we are only beginning to rediscover. The cosmos is not somewhere far away. It is inside the human being. And if one listens closely, one can still hear the faint heartbeat of that city beneath the earth. It is quiet, like the whisper of rain, and eternal, like the movement of the sun. It reminds us that true greatness is not in conquering the world, but in becoming part of it. Perhaps it is in places like Aguada Phoenix that the answer lies to the question of why we build at all. Not for power, but for meaning. Share your thoughts in the comments. Could the ancients have known more than we do today? And if this philosophy of ancient civilizations resonates with you, consider supporting the video with a like and a subscription. It helps us discover and reveal more stories hidden beneath the earth.